Hello and welcome to Good Film Hunting. This episode, I'm joined by our Singapore correspondent, which we'll call you for now, Dennis Cadigan. We are talking about the movie Strange Days, directed by Kathryn Bigelow. Dennis, where do you stand on Kathryn Bigelow as a director, before and after this movie?
Yeah, I think I've always kind of liked her. I mean, probably like you, I discovered her through Point Break, I would say,
Mm.
in 1991, which is also one of Keanu Reeves' best movies. And basically, I went back, I think, and watched maybe Near Dark after that. And as we know, she had a real kind of renaissance around 2008 when she won the Oscar for Hurt Locker, and that really put her into the stratosphere.
Mm.
Because before that, she probably wasn't considered an A-list director as such, whereas now she would definitely be a name if she's attached to any product projects. But back in that time, like Point Break, Near Dark, and obviously Strange Days, I would say that her name being attached to a project wouldn't necessarily guarantee at least commercial success. Critics were always fairly fond of her, I would say. But yeah, Strange Days was kind of like you said, in between Oscar success and kind of
Mm.
early semi-indie success. So she definitely, yeah. I wonder how she looks back in the movie herself, actually, but we'll get into that. I haven't seen a lot of appraisals on her end since then.
Yeah, I mean, like you, Point Break was probably my first encounter with her as well on a rainy school day when the bus driver didn't turn up. I remember it was taped on VHS and I was just astounded by this adrenaline masculinity ride with our man Keanu, who finds a knack between not being able to act but by being such a screen presence. And we talked about Hurt Locker, how that really gave her the acclaim she deserved. Well, the movie we're talking about now, Strange Days, could have derailed her career. It was an absolute box office bomb at the time. I don't have the exact statistics with me, but I know it made 8 million and it was spent maybe 40 or 60 million, something like that, which is a real turkey. But from the opening moments of this movie, when we get this insane POV ride that I think is some kind of robbery anyway, and we just get this adrenaline ride up through these buildings. It reminded me of something that you actually, maybe it's because I saw it recently, but it reminded me of something as frantic as a scene from Heat, and we get these, I guess, robbers running through this building, very frantic, running up the stairs. We get this beautiful POV shot of one of them scaling this building and then another falling to his death. Then boom, we go straight to Ralph Fiennes taking off this head technology, which immediately establishes the world of that. This technology allows you to almost feel cerebrally, I guess is the best way to put it, what someone's feeling and actually connect to a memory. And it's just a masterful intro to a movie that sets up the world in maybe something that it would take lesser sci-fi movies a good 40, 50 minutes. Like everything that's accomplished in that scene, from the frantic action to establishing the world, to establishing a character and establishing the technology. It's a fantastic opening, isn't it?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like to go back to first of all the box office performance, but also I think the title probably didn't do it any favors. I mean,
Mm.
Strange Days, it's a bit bland actually. It's the same name as the Doors song, which is used in it at some point and their album. So it might have been something to do with, oh, I want to connect. They do that from time to time, don't they? Some artistic directors saying, I want to make a kind of a link. Because if you compare it to, and I've seen this movie compared to stuff like Blade Runner, we'll say, and even elements of The Matrix, and even something as simple as a title of both of those films just
Mm.
catches you more. You want to go, okay, what is Blade Runner? What's it about? The Matrix. Whereas Strange Days, you're kind of saying it's a bit, it could be like a C-list horror movie for all you know,
Yeah.
going into it. Like, so that's one side. And then it seems like the marketing PR thing. I mean, if once you see the movie and look back at how the trailer looks, and as you mentioned, the POV and everything, and it probably doesn't do it any justice, to be honest, even after seeing the film. So you can imagine if they're trying to promote the film on just bits and pieces, it doesn't
Mm.
really work. It's one that has to be watched all the way through. So that's one thing about the success or the lack of success. I mean, and as you mentioned, yeah, just kicking you straight into the opening, it's kind of what Bigelow does best, really. I mean, she does the adrenaline thing. I mean, when she's at her peak like that, and like scenes from Point Break we mentioned, and her success in The Hurt Locker, no one can really touch her for pure action cinema. And even here is kind of elements of action, sci-fi, and again, you could say there's even a James Cameron influence, not coincidentally as well at times, which kind of ties in, I would say. Even parts of it reminded me of Terminator 2 without necessarily trying to rip it off, but just in terms of the blockbuster kind of setup, I would say.
Yeah, apparently, James Cameron wrote the script along with I think Jay Crooks or something like that. I believe so. He actually had a big influence in writing the script. At least I think he wrote it in the 1980s. It is true that a name is very important because it could be a C movie horror, like you said, or it could be an indie movie. It doesn't do justice to the concept, I guess. And you mentioned that it's based on a Doors title of their album. This movie, and it sounds obvious to say, but this movie couldn't be more 90s in its aesthetic. And even though it's set in 1999 on the verge of the millennial, but the same way certain movies captured the zeitgeist of the 80s is one that springs to mind a lot, or maybe certain movies really capture what it is in the 70s. This movie, where it's grunge, where it's backdrop thematically, where it's there was a time, it reminds me of that Simpsons line, where there was a time when America was obsessed with Australia culture, and they thought it would end. They thought it would never end. This is kind of around that time where America was obsessed with like 90s hip hop, Compton, LA, and that's all fused into it as well. And grunge, the race riots, and Rodney King, everything that was happening at the time is aesthetically as well as thematically thrown into this movie like a real melting pot, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Even to go to who's actually, for being dead all the way through, a quite key character in Jericho 1, who's kind of the perceived, modern day Martin Luther King as such. He's kind of a mixture of Tupac, Malcolm X, and a few other, there's obviously a Rodney King thing, like you mentioned too, to the riots and the whole just pre-millennium tension going on that's all stirring the pot. And as you said, like, for being set so kind of, well, mid-90s going towards the millennium in the same way that End of Days did, I guess, just right on the cusp, that it's very much specifically kind of going towards that. And even the cast, there's something so 90s about the supporting cast.
Oh, yeah.
When everyone from Tom Sizemore, William Fichtner, I guess, Fichtner, I'm not sure how it is, but just so many actors, Vincent D'Onofrio, who turn up in like a lot of 90s stuff. And I think the casting of Juliette Lewis, actually, we'll get into later, works quite well as well. Like you mentioned, the grunge thing, the fact that she can actually sing for her part in the movie makes a lot of sense too.
Yeah, I've got a cast list here of the who's who of 90s. Like we mentioned, it is such an amazing cast of character actors, really, but probably the 90s when their star shone most bright. Angela Bassett, of course, Juliette Lewis, we'll get to her, but Tom Sizemore, friend of the family to you, Vincent D'Onofrio, you know that family well. We won't get into that. And Michael Wincott as well. It's a brilliant cast, but, or maybe not a but I'm very interested to know what you think of the glue that maybe holds all this together in terms of everything that's put on this character, and indeed this actor, Ralph Fiennes, who plays Nero, of course. Now, this movie came out in 1995, which is fresh off the heels of Schindler's List, when he did show what a fantastic actor he is. But I feel like this is certainly not a comparison, it's not on the same level, but people like Brad Pitt or Hugh Grant, now that they've gotten a bit older, that they've aged into their characters more, and I'm much more interested in Ralph Fiennes as he's got older, and stuff like In Bruges, The Menu, and A Bigger Splash. And this is around the time where he was doing a lot of things like romantic movies and maybe a few rom-coms here and there. and Schindler's List was only the real inkling that he could carry a movie like this, but when he's a bad guy. Now, looking at the list of characters who are actors who were up for this role, there is a few that were I could see in it, or maybe just taking it even away from that in a remake, someone like Leonardo DiCaprio, or just I still don't know how I feel about Ralph Fiennes in this role. There's something about his voice that puts me off. It reminds me a bit of almost a Robin Williams at times. I don't fully know. Maybe it's the microphone. His voice is lacking something, but his performance, his movement, his energy, everything he's doing in that way is always engaging. And I just wonder is another reason why this movie didn't do as well was because of the main man attached to it at the time. I don't know the answer to that. I keep going back and forth to him being brilliant or maybe just lacking one or two key elements. But I am a fan of Ralph Fiennes as an actor. That's the other thing.
Yeah, I can see what you mean to a certain extent. I think for his career trajectory, it probably came at 95, just before The English Patient, which obviously put him on the top map in terms of like Oscar glory and stuff. Even if a lot of people, myself included, find that film a bit maybe dated, overrated, but that's completely separate to like the rest of his career where he's generally been successful. It actually, you mentioned Schindler's List, but also Quiz Show, you remember from, I guess,
right,
same year or maybe just before it, but
around
yeah,
that time,
that
yeah.
strong dramatic role as well. So I guess, yeah, it's kind of like you said, he wasn't quite ready to be full on A-lister, but this was a film that maybe would have pushed him up to that if it had been successful. So yeah, I mean, the character is an interesting one because he's kind of forced to do a bit of a 360, right? In a way that maybe someone like Nicolas Cage might have been easier to follow. I think maybe, Cage with all his mannerisms and his, yeah,
Maybe.
he might have pulled off the whole manic kind of ex-cop selling, black market stuff at the beginning, forced to kind of like go on a redemptive path somewhat a bit more convincingly. Because like you said, Ralph Fiennes, yeah, I mean, now if he did the same role, I think he'd be a lot more successful at it, at the whole character engagements, like you mentioned, and being bought as the sleazy guy. Because for me, the ultimate star of this movie is Angela Bassett, but I'll get to her later. I think she's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
But for Fiennes, yeah, I guess they need that type of character who's not just all good, has a decent kind of arc to his past, but has kind of fallen wayward in the meantime. And then there's so much going on in terms of corruption and everything else, but we'll get into the finer details that I guess, yeah, you need that type of gray narrator, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's miscast, but in a way, now that I talk about it with you, he's not a traditional leading man, leading character, Nero, that you would have in a movie like this. He's not very good with his hands, like in a physical sense of fighting people, which gives him one less avenue to investigate this crime as we'll get onto. He's he's a bit of a like myself, Dennis. He's a bit of a fashionista. Um, he wears these kind of like over the top. I don't know if it's a snake shirt, and there's one hilarious scene where when things are really escalating, and he says, "Oh shit," and then Angela Bassett, who I agree is brilliant in this, stops and it's like, "What?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't have a tie that matches this shirt." Like he's he's very different, but the character, no doubt about it, I agree with you. He's a very interesting character. We'll get into that a bit now. He used to be a police officer, and now what he's doing is selling these black market. I don't know what the term is, but they're on mini disc. They're on mini disc anyway.
Yeah, it's so funny. The mini discs were like, the paragon of kind of the next step up at that time, as we have good memories of as well from back in the day. But anyway, yeah, I think they're called squid in this and like illegal black market sensory memories slash kind of, how would you say, something almost hallucinogenic about things that you can see from your past and things that you also want to see. So they've been put on like the banned list pretty quickly by the government, and there's a certain element to this movie that hasn't dated badly in the sense that the whole control aspect that you can even see from various governments over the last couple of years about how much they want to actually have like at their beck and call and how much they allow. And of course, Nero, like we mentioned, is finding his kind of future trade after leaving the police force and kind of semi-disgrace, selling the squids and, being in
Squids,
basically, being in the kind of the slums of LA as we come on towards 2000. So, he's using his contacts, and that's where Tom Sizemore comes in as well. He's kind of his buddy who's also hooked into a lot of like kind of dodgy shenanigans here and there. And
yeah. Well,
I
when
forget his character name.
I've got it here because I'm trying to be organized this week. Max.
Max,
Yeah, I mean, for all its sci-fi and all its futuristic endeavors, shall we say, it's very much a noir, maybe a neo-noir at heart. It's got Juliette Lewis as Fate, as almost a femme fatale character. It's the murky underbelly of LA is explored through this technology, and we also get this very, now I've got no problem with this because I love the genre. For all the technology's potential, and it does commit, which we'll also get to, it really does commit to the device itself. But for all that, it's a very kind of corrupt city, corrupt cop saw something that you shouldn't see story at its core, because basically eventually Ralph Fiennes' character Nero, this girl that he knows, tries to contact him for help. And just to set it up, it turns out that she was wearing one of the squids at the time, and she witnessed something with Vincent D'Onofrio's character and William Fichtner's that she shouldn't have. And basically that sets up a whole bunch of things. And Juliette Lewis is, in the 90s especially, and I was looking what she's doing recently, and there's a few shows I want to check out, like Yellow Jackets, that she used to lead in, because she pretty much disappeared after the 90s. But we had Natural Born Killers, Cape
Dust
Fear.
Till Dawn.
Yeah, Dust Till Dawn, Cape Fear. And this, she is if they were casting for a Harley Quinn, and she was, if that was the 90s, she'd be perfect. She plays these offbeat, wild characters, and she's often puts in fearless performances. And in this, when you break it down, it's actually a small role in terms of how much we get of her, but she's just so big, and she commits so much to this performance that she's really entertaining in everything she does, including the grunt scene where she sings a song that's as good as any grunt song that I've heard in a while. Juliette Lewis, she's a fantastic actress.
Yeah, she's great. It's a master, like we said, it's a master stroke to cast her, because the fact that she can actually sing, has her band, and she has kind of a respectable music career. I mean, it's not like Russell Crowe's band,
Yeah.
So like, yeah, she just carries that really well. Like you said, everything about her, the look and just the style and the 90s-ness, like she is a kind of a quintessential 90s star. She's a lot actually like the Garbage front singer, Shirley Manson from Stupid Girl. She reminds me of her, actually, similar build and everything else, similar kind of stage presence, power. And yeah, it really helps that side of the movie too, because it sells that whole idealistic thing of her being, out of Nero's reach now as his ex-girlfriend, and kind of being somewhere else completely, into the music business, but also with this mogul who's himself a kind of a shady character. Michael Wincott, of course, he of the gravel voiced fame.
He I don't know if you know this, but you know who actually was interested in playing that role? Bono.
Oh no. I can imagine.
I couldn't, and I'm glad it didn't happen, because obviously Michael Wincott, he's just a perfect villain, isn't he? And a perfect sleazebag. But so there is this kind of, I guess it's eventually becomes a love triangle. But another thing I liked about this movie was, normally how these movies come about is we have the lead, we have the person he meets, and then we have this slow kind of love story that like it develops in between the action that we're not really interested in. This one, it gives it to us in a completely different way, where Ralph Fiennes' character Nero is obsessed with Fate, and almost to the point where he literally stalks her almost at times. And then we have this relationship that's not quite explained between Angela Bassett, who I agree is fantastic in this movie. Why she didn't get an action movie, where she's the lead after this, I'll never know. And I saw her in Black Panther recently, and she's got such gravitas, and she's definitely the best thing about that movie. And so we have this relationship that we don't quite know between Nero and Mace, and she seems to be almost indebted to him, but also really annoyed by him. And it turns out that as a cop, he did something for her, maybe saved her son. It's never implicitly stated, but we can infer it. But she's the action lead in this movie, really, isn't she? Rather than Ralph Fiennes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and actually, she got the majority of the plaudits. Like you could say, a lot of critics are a bit uncertain about Ralph Fiennes, even the way we were kind of talking about the character never fits into one box, which has like positives and negatives. But for her character, it's very, self-aware, a stronger person, I would say, that comes across on the screen too, more aware of her place in the world, despite the bad things that happen to her and all the rest. But yeah, like you said, definitely someone that can handle themselves better in combat. Seems like just a better police officer, despite what happened to them both. And she's working more in kind of private security, but she still kind of kept her core character, I would say, when Nero lost his a bit by the, or at least it went a bit by the wayside once he started getting to the squid business. So I like their whole dynamic, just the way they speak to each other, the way she kind of not talks down to him, but just kind of acts as if she's
Sick of
constantly
his
disappointed
shit.
in the things that disappointed in all the stuff that she's doing. That dynamic's really well played out. Like, kind of it gives the best side of probably Nero's character in getting to know him, because like you mentioned, nothing is too linear in the sense of the storytelling going from A to B chronologically. So sometimes we have to wait and be brought back, like you mentioned, to the time that he helped Mace, which is probably why she stays around for him, because otherwise she would have been gone a long time ago. So there's that whole thing that's always hanging on the plot line, saying why is she still kind of like entertaining this Muppet, basically. But
yeah. Well, I guess now's a good time to really get into spoilers then. It is eventually revealed almost that she says this line about, I don't know what it is, unrequited love, and then we're to infer that that's how she feels about Nero. So I guess she's in love with him at this point, or maybe she always has been since that moment. So it does become quite an interesting love triangle where you grow to love the character so much that you kind of want him to end up with her and forget about Fate, who's an absolute head wrecker at this point. But yeah, so getting into spoilers, they talk about committing to a device, because there's something in this that absolutely shocked me, and I don't really get shocked much. I mean, when you see Tom Sizemore in a film and he's the good best friend, you kind of get the feeling that he's up to something, even if he's not up to something, because he's an actor that he has such dark energy. I feel like he's got such dark energy as a person, and maybe, I don't know, he was drawn to these roles where he could act out this kind of dark energy as well, because I've never seen energy and such darkness emit from the screen so much as in any time Tom Sizemore or Sizemore is in a movie. He just there's something about him, and I maybe he is a fantastic actor, but maybe he's not like that. Maybe he's the nicest guy in the world. Well, when he was alive, but so he gets into some business in this. So the squid in one scene, they kind of bring in, which you think is going to be a serial killer at one point, but Ralph Fiennes' character, he gets sent this disc again, this mini disc, and in the back of Angela Bassett's limousine, and he puts it on, and it's a rape scene, which is horrific in itself. But what the rapist has done is put on the squid to the victim, so she'll be able to feel herself being raped and the rapist's thoughts. And then to even make it more complicated, Ralph Fiennes is also feeling this while he's watching it. Now, that shook me, and it's a credit to the film as well that it's able to, and it has the balls to think, what's the darkest, most messed up thing that people would do with this technology, and put it in a plot, make us deconstruct it, make us feel it, and actually put it in. It's really dark, isn't it? It's a shocking moment.
Yeah, those are the kind of groundbreaking scenes, I guess, in this, and like you mentioned, the POV stuff as well with the kind of foot chases, very much Bigelow's call. So I guess, yeah, as a director, she really wanted to push the boat out and that kind of stuff, and say, this is the dark future that that's possible through the web, and the kind of stuff that you can see now on the black internet side of things, as they call it.
Mm.
And yeah, definitely, like in terms of something original, it is something that hasn't been done before, and it definitely kind of pushes the genre out and saying, oh, this is possible. This is the kind of thing that in the future, you'll be able to kind of do it in a VR sense and beyond, of being able to read memories and thoughts. And yeah, I think it's definitely something that she's able to work with very well in this, and kind of brings that message across of, no holds barred.
Yeah, and I think as well, and another thing that occurred to me is what this movie does very well, and maybe why it didn't do very well. Me and you have a great reverence for 70s Hollywood cinema that, you've got stuff, I don't know, like Cool Hand Luke, movies like that, where it doesn't end happily ever after. There was a time in the 70s where Americans were happy to really be disturbed and really, I don't know, don't get a fairy tale ending. And now this movie does kind of work out, but it gives us a hell of a lot of darkness along the way. But maybe audiences just weren't ready to deal with things like this. It's very different to maybe not 90s movies in general, but in Hollywood, certainly a few slipped in, like Seven and things like that from time to time. But this is essentially a Hollywood blockbuster that has some of this stuff in it.
Yeah, Seven actually came out the same year as well, funnily enough, 1995. And I think that's another of the big problems, the competitiveness. Like we were talking recently again about all the films that came out that year. And you mentioned Heat earlier as well. Braveheart. I mean, everything from even the kids' films were just competitive, like Toy Story, Babe. They're at a certain kind of, everything was at a certain level that year of just being really good quality. And also, like, a lot of them happened to be box office successes. So something had to fall, something had to give along the way. And Strange Days is the one. I mean, I I hadn't heard of it until years later. I would say like well past 2000, well into like the early kind of noughties, and I just hadn't even heard of it. Again, one of the main things I put it back down to the title. Like, you know, I could list off all the Usual Suspects, 12 Monkeys, all the stuff we'd kind of seen from '95 that kind of they all made their mark. Leon, you know, the list is massive from that year. It's one of the best years for film of the '90s, and like that's generally seen as a really strong decade across the board. And just you know, this is really one of the, I would say, big budget kind of flops of the time. I mean, it's almost on the Cutthroat Island level of, you know, not quite enough to think a movie, but definitely like enough to kind of go, yeah, this is a significant misfire in terms of commercial.
Yeah, Waterworld
Release.
as well was another one at the time
Yeah.
that brought Kevin Costner down for a bit. The other thing I liked about this central device of the squids as well, and it got me thinking of filmmaking in general, like what to capture, how to make us feel different things. Like there's one scene where, and I'm pretty disconnected from all the movies I've seen, where if somebody is upset on screen, I'm not going to get upset anymore. If somebody dies on screen, it will take a lot for me to feel that death. But because in this movie, we're forced to deal with a central conceit or device that we have to have it in our heads at all times that characters can actually feel these things, which is what directors are trying to do with every frame and every shot that they're trying to put in. I don't know, in almost a storyboard, this combination in order to make us feel certain things, whether it's music, whether it's through POV. That's a director's job anyway. And as filmmakers, we often get immune, or as film watchers, should I say, we often get immune to that. And so it takes a lot to make me feel Dennis. So I'm quite, I'm quite a stone at this stage. But in this movie, whatever it was about the squids and having to take it on board and have it in my head that characters are feeling what they're seeing, then it allowed me to be able to feel their emotion a lot more as well, where if that wasn't established, I'd be like, okay, great. Like there's one scene where this guy is missing legs and Nero gives him a squid and he gets to feel running on a beach, and this woman looks at him and it's a beautiful sand and sunset. Now, if that scene is shown to me just as almost as a dream of a character, or I don't know, something that he fantasized about, it wouldn't do nearly as much as it being established that he feels it. So when you do get scenes like that, and at the other contrast of that, the rape, it actually engages you emotionally in a completely different way than you normally would. And this movie is very emotionally affecting, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. I think they bring that across really well. If they didn't, it wouldn't be a success in many ways. Like you said, the fact that, it's the main kind of precipice that these squid are kind of illegal and they have to be sold. And why are they still so popular in the black market? Because they do bring people kind of a mix of happiness and kind of, yeah, memories, kind of whether good or bad. Even Nero himself is what you could consider an addict, I guess, to the device itself, to looking back over his kind of relationship with faith and everything else. And lots of other people we see using it, like you said, throughout. And then, of course, it's starting to be used to kind of to basically, I guess, puncture people in terms of their brain power to be able to actually focus, and starts putting people in a type of a coma. So just like any technology, there's the kind of the really negative side of it that can be harnessed before long, and that happens towards the kind of final third of the movie, I guess, once Nero is kind of being pursued and he realizes that like someone wants to kind of shut him up as he's covering the conspiracy involving Jericho 1 and all the shootout that ensued from that, like the Rodney King side of the story, you could say.
Yeah, you mentioned the Rodney King backdrop, and the racial tension of this movie is certainly a thing of its time. One thing I enjoyed less about this movie was, I don't know how you felt, but it got a bit convoluted at the end. It got a bit hard to follow. Like at one point, when the cops, what happens is they kill, I think the guy who plays him, I don't have it here, but I think, oh God, his name is something Plummer anyway. The guy Jericho 1, he he gets shot down terribly by the police, Vincent D'Fornio, and then we find out that it was just basically an execution, and they're trying to find the footage. I enjoyed that because I enjoy cop movies, and there's one great scene actually, which we should mention. There's a chase, and the set piece of this scene is fantastic, where this limousine that's bullet resistant, not bulletproof, as Ralph Fiennes says at one point, whatever happened to bulletproof? What do you mean bullet resistant? It's a great line. There's a fantastic car chase where they're getting chased by the cops, and Angela Bassett, the action star of the movie, she's pedaling the car backwards and she swerves. And then you think that's it. That would be a point in a lesser movie where they get away and that's the end of it. But the scene continues on and they get cornered. And I think it's at the end of a dock where there's this dead end almost to the ocean. And then there's a standoff. Oh, what's going to happen? And then, of course, it escalates further where they can't get past because the tire is broken. Then the cops get the gasoline and then they start burning the car. And then you're thinking, how are they going to get out of this one? Then, of course, the thing that was established earlier now becomes their savior, which is the water when they drive into it. That's a fantastic scene, and I was very on board at that point, and I was really enjoying the serial killer or whatever it was, but it's certainly kind of serial killer in conception, and then it kind of gets a bit convoluted, and I kind of didn't know where I was standing with the movie. Like, is Faith good? Is she going to turn? Why does she turn on Tom Sizemore now? And there's one scene where he has to give a monologue to how he planned the whole thing. And when a character is explaining something at gunpoint, it's not a good look. And I got a lot of mileage out of this movie, and I enjoyed most of it, but I didn't enjoy how needlessly complicated and almost twisty it got in the final maybe 20 minutes.
Yeah, there's a bit of lead villain speaks kind of thing, like, when he has the gun. Yeah, I agree with that. Like, this is my master plan, and exposition dump, I guess, and also you know that he's not going to get to do it. Like, and again, yeah, Fate's character, I guess you never really know where you stand with her because, like, I guess for most of the film, she's kind of a flashback anyway, and an ideal that may not even have been real in some ways. Like you mentioned, Squid is a mix of reality and kind of also dreamlike kind of aspects of the mind. So she's never really exactly kind of present as a modern day character. I mean, you see her when Ralph Fiennes kind of goes to the club to watch her sing and everything, and just like to establish her relationship with the music mogul like Michael Wincott. But yeah, even at the end of the film, like you said, she goes against Tom Sizemore, who is sleeping with her, and that's the reason for the kind of the double cross, the triple cross. Yeah, like it is kind of it is set up as a type of a Chinatown where there's like a lot of expose, the kind of the noir aspect of the, you know, Nero's not exactly a detective. He is an ex-cop, but he's trying to figure out what's happening. And then like with all that, like the cops being involved with Max, Tom Sizemore's character, and then yeah, the fact that they start, you know, cutting up loose ends by putting those guys into a coma by making them look at the Squid memories and essentially making them brain dead. Yeah, there's a lot going on when they start tying up loose ends and trying to get their own way out of it. And like you said, there's a lot of probably exposition in having to explain all of their motivations at the same time and tie up the plot and the whole Jericho 1 thing as well. So yeah, it does get a bit messy towards the end, but I would say it's kind of probably only the last 20% of the movie, maybe less. Whereas, yeah.
Yeah, and I think as well, another thing, I think the movie hit its, even though I just dismissed it for the exposition, but in terms of the building of the story and the story arc itself, we get Tom Sizemore's Alan Rickman moment almost from Die Hard, where we get that technology must have been very in at the time, where there's a fight at the balcony and he almost hilariously holds on to Ralph Fiennes' tie. And I'm trying to think as like, okay, I'll buy it. Okay. And but it is a good scene as well. And the build up to that scene is fantastic, where we get the fake rape on top of that. That was a fantastic reveal as well. And so the movie, in terms of how it built to this point, it is the pinnacle of the movie, in my opinion anyway. Maybe you'll have a different opinion. And then the bad guy that has revealed has now been defeated. And then the movie continues on for about 15 minutes to this almost pompous, over the top shootout, which I guess that's when they were trying to tie in thematically the other side of things, where obviously when they have this footage and Ralph Fiennes is actually which tells how competent he is, he just wants to return it to get Fate back, or there's some selfish reason why he wants to do with it. And then Angela Bassett's like, I love you, but if you give that back, or whoever you're going to give it to, instead of giving it to the authorities, I will disown you. So his character is very snivelly, but at that point they're trying to tie in something thematically to the zeitgeist and the consciousness of the time with the shootout and the cops, which I think should have happened either before that or shouldn't have happened at all. And you're kind of just left with the last 10 minutes that I rather didn't see that. It gets a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, and then they want to have the New Year's celebration fireworks and stuff as well. So it all happens to be like at the end. Yeah. Studios do that from time to time, and that's kind of, you know, I get modest to semi-high budget for its time, I guess 40-50 million, like you said. So there's probably a lot of that going on, as well as like we want a big-ish finale. We want all the massive confetti coming down, and there is a lot of it, like coming down on top of the crowds, and then just after a big shootout. So it's almost a little too neat, that ending, and I think that's what they're kind of building towards, you know, because the movie's far from neat for like, again, the remainder of the 80%. So to do it that way is a bit unsatisfying in some ways, in terms of a conclusion. Something that wouldn't be an easy sell most of the way through, with the kind of the sci-fi, the noir, the double plots going on.
Yeah, but I think we're both on the same page with this. There's loads there for people to discover about this movie, and there's certainly so much to recommend, and so much that's unique about this movie that almost makes it a cult classic or a hidden gem maybe for modern cinema goers. That's almost vital to check out, I would say. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, definitely. Again, going back to like, all the movies you mentioned from '95 earlier that pretty much everyone has seen by now. And if you were to mention one that very few have seen, it would be this, like from that list for sure. Strange Days, even just to say the title, people are like, what's that again? And there are people who have
Mm,
seen this and have forgotten the name. So again, that'll tell you, kind of like
yeah.
the movie itself has an impact, but the name doesn't actually help to tie it in more, very much at least.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely for sure, a strong recommendation all the way through. I mean, it never drags. It's that type of film that there's plenty of good ideas, and even though at times like some of the influences may be obvious, some kind of less so. Like you said, there's still groundbreaking aspects to the fact that yeah, Bigelow's direction always brings something kind of different to the party, and then like you mentioned, the squid effects and kind of what people can see out of that. So yeah, again, as a sci-fi movie coming in between a Blade Runner and the Matrix, I would say, like also movies with their own ideas that kind of want their own universe. This is kind of in between two stools in terms of when it was released and what audiences were kind of ready for. I mean, if it had come out a year or two later in a kind of even an equilibrium sense, it probably could have had a bit more success off the back of the Matrix or something like that. And again, that would have been like 99, 90, yeah, 2000-ish. But it's just timing as well as everything else and the
Yeah.
marketing, the PR, just kind of all let it down, I guess, at the same time.
Yeah. All right, that's a good place to leave it, Dennis. Many thanks, and we'll have you on again soon.